Welcome to Hashknife Hangouts. I'm Calen Carpenter. With me is my partner, co-host, and father, Brandon. Before we get started, for those on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. You can shut off the notification bell if you want. On Facebook, like, comment, and share. And of course, on all the platforms, spread the word to your friends. And now to the opening notes. So this week has actually been pretty hectic for me. It was my birthday week, so I got to have a little too much fun, and I didn't really prepare. However, today I looked at a article that was random. I was just like, hey, what's in the news in the ag? So I found one, and it's actually called the five takeaways from a virtual cattle conference. It was dated yesterday, which is February 26th, and it has 5 things. So I'm just going to kind of lay out what was in the article, and then Dad and I will discuss. We can go topic by topic, or just kind of feel our way out for the next hour. Essentially, the first one is actually, let me start with this. What is NCBA? So the NCBA is the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. That's why I want to make sure I said it right. And they held a 2021 virtual cattle industry convention. And I actually don't know where. I didn't see that in this article, but they went through some of the takeaways of what happened in 2021, where they foresee beef being in what happened in 2020 and what they foresee in 2021, and just had some online speakers and delivering the updates of the industry overall. So the first item up is they said good news on prices. So the NCBA actually sees prices increasing a little bit for cattlemen, specifically this year. Not by a lot, but by a little. They said there's a trend because poultry supplies have actually kind of flattened out. But the pounds per capita of consumption this year in the United States is probably going to decrease a little bit. However, I know reading articles earlier this year, that also is interesting because China is supposed to increase in its consumption. So we'll see.
China has lied so many times about the imports they're going to take that I don't even listen to it anymore.
Yeah, and that's why you got to take that with a grain of salt. But the other thing too is I'm kind of looking at this while I'm talking to you. The other thing too is that I mean, it said poultry, but they say prices will go up. Well, yeah. However, I mean, I
Well,
should hope so
this week,
because after last year, that was really bad. Like you can't go anywhere but up. I hope.
well, yeah, it can always get worse.
Yeah.
What do I always say? You hope for the best, but it can always get worse.
Yeah.
I think it was this week, Tyson pled guilty to price fixing on the poultry side of packing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
and that's something right here. Actually, number 2, pandemic lessons. They said that uh the let me say it right. Um Purdue University meat industry economist says that just 10 plants harvest 63% of all cattle in the country. That's a very few amount of plants for a
wait a minute.
lot of beef.
How many? Say that again.
Purdue University meat industry economist, I'm not going to say his name. I don't want to say that stuff, but
Yeah.
he says just 10 plants harvest 63% of all cattle in the country. That's 2/3. I mean, and then
Okay. Those are
59% of hogs.
okay. Those are total plants. There are 4
Packers.
packing plant owners
Yeah.
for the big 4 that process 80%.
Right.
So you can look at these figures any way you want. Those were individual plants they're talking about, which yeah, there's a shortage of that, but that's also, out of every bad, poor, devastating situation, whatever way you want to look at something that comes up, we're able to innovate. That's what we do in a free market society. And how many people have decided to, you know what, I'm finishing my own beef
A
instead of
lot
sending
this
them
year.
to a, yeah. And how many people, there's so many processors. We had to, let's see, it was just right at a year out scheduled time to have a beef butchered,
Right.
a year in advance. So, and this is not a normal packer. Some of these guys are changing the way they do business as well. Like the one we've always used, they no longer custom cut. They've got such a great thing going with the way they produce beef for their customers that they don't cut for individuals anymore.
Well, it's not
which
even that. It's
that
just it's not
creates.
worth their time. It's one of, like going through business school right now. Like it's interesting you say that because they're noticing, okay, what's actually getting the most profit and then what's not worth our time. And so they're going, oh, it's worth more to us, both time and energy and money, to just do a standardized beef and provide it that way than it is to say, oh, what does the Carpenter family want? What does the Smith
Right.
family want? What does the Johnson family want?
And they're going to bring their own cattle in, and we're going to have to give them a custom order. How do they want their
Right.
specific done? Now, the beauty part of someone like that, who I think, we're talking about here locally, they do a great job, fantastic job. If things went south on them, and it isn't that it's not worth their time, it's just that they can become more efficient and make a better profit while producing more. That's the name of the game, right? So if something went south, though, guess what they can do? They can go right back to custom cutting like they were.
Right.
If that business model didn't work, it's like it's not a one-way street. They can come back, they can back off a little bit and redo and undo what they were doing. So good. That creates a market for other people that are cut meat, and there are small butcher shops springing up everywhere. Not a bad thing.
Right.
If you get too much of something though, and then it collapses, not
It's
everybody's not
flat
everybody's
line.
holding the bag with the gold in it. Some
Yeah.
of them are just holding the bag. So you got to be careful what you do there. You don't want to overextend. Anyway, sorry.
But well, it's interesting though because I mean it says 10 plants harvested essentially 2/3 of the cattle last year in this country, and then sorry, not 10 plants but 15 handled 59% of the hogs. So I mean that's still and it says that presents a bottleneck in the meat industry between producers and consumers, and that's precisely why when you go to the store you see those prices go up. But then it also said, and here's I quote, at one point last summer, we were down 40% in meat packing volume from the year before. Each plant is very impactful. Maybe we should have more medium and small processors, which you just said. We'd be more resilient in a crisis. Now, again,
Absolutely.
that's important, but there's a fine line because I think again, you go down that line and you start getting too heavy, and then it's going to be too much volume at a certain point, and then you're going to have a bunch of butchers sitting there with knives in their hand, kind of doing this, like, oh, is somebody gonna come around?
Well, and it's become in this country we have a lot of wild game processing,
Yeah.
and a lot of these plants do that as well. Well, there's been such a bottleneck. You're right, and the need for a small shop to handle some of the backup of just beef or just hogs, that they no longer take in wild game.
Right.
A bunch of those, they just can't do it. And there's kind of a logistics to it too. I mean, I cut meat right out of high school for some local people there. Learned in a hurry. It's a great skill to have. There's a lot I forgot, but it taught me that I don't want to be a butcher. I'd rather be
It's a
making the
tough
stuff
job.
than not an easy job. It is grueling on your back, and just the repetitive motion of stuff, the ergonomics of things will just tear your body up. And you see a lot of these guys that their hands are shot, wrists, elbows, and their backs aren't good. But anyway, um, we did a lot of wild game along with cattle, and you had to keep those because of the USDA and the health department. You had to keep those carcasses. They would allow you to put them in the same cooler, but they couldn't even be on the same rail. So there's some logistics there that causes another management issue for them. That it's like you can't let this carcass touch this one or come in so close to it. So and if you're doing all beef, man, they can just pile them in there.
Which
And you can be faster and more efficient.
I find that really interesting. Is it because when the carcass is in there, it should be skinned at that point. There's no hair or anything like that in the like locker.
Right.
Why does that make a difference? Did they
Because it's the government telling you that you can't do that.
I'm just trying to figure out the
Wild.
logic. What sort of logic or what sort of supposed statistic came up that said that you had to have it off of like not touching? I mean, meat's meat. I
Well,
get it. It's
yeah,
a
they don't even
different.
want them in the same on the small lockers. They or locker plant. We call them locker plants or butcher shop.
Yeah.
They didn't even want them in the same building, but they would give them an allowance because of the proximity and the size of it and the need that they filled. I think most of it was because it was just that, it's wild game, was not something that was raised, nurtured, and controlled feed, that kind of stuff. That they're talking about diseases and vectors, and it's like, especially at that time, was completely outside the realm of anything being contaminated. Now you've got a few things from wild game like chronic wasting disease, but
Right.
that affects the live animals, not the dead ones.
Yeah. Well, I'd be.
So
I'm curious if that's still a thing, if that's been rectified to an extent. I'd love to talk to a butcher
I'm
about
sure
that.
not. No, no, no.
Man, that makes
Not the
no
last I
sense.
knew, as of a couple of years ago. It was still the same, where you weren't supposed to have those in the same proximity.
I mean, you
But
talk about waste and inefficiency. Like, man, well, we just got done talking
something
about
government
government.
run that would be
Yeah, I
wasteful
know.
and inefficient
Yeah, I know. All right,
and wouldn't make
moving
sense.
on. The other thing too was it said before we go to the third point of this virtual conference, they said that they had food sales at grocery stores increased nearly 13%. Now, I believe that because there were a lot of people doing at home meals and stuff like that.
Right.
They just didn't go anywhere. Now, what I would be curious to see, that is interesting, and I think it's very important. However, the big but is how much did you lose in the restaurant sector? Because lots and lots of restaurants not only stopped doing things for an extended period, they also they went under. So you no longer have
Right.
that pull of the supplies. If you're increasing 13% in the groceries, that's great. Probably less waste of meat as well. However, like, what's your loss on the other end with the restaurants? And that's not in this article. And I would love to see what that number is, because I think
Yeah,
it would
that's a
probably
really
be.
it's very interesting. But the problem is, I think, is that you're consuming overall probably a very similar amount of meat.
You
But
think so?
I think you're eating what you're eating, right? But when you fix it at home, you probably don't fix quite as much, or if you do, it's thrown in the refrigerator for tomorrow's lunch or leftover. Where in a restaurant you might do that, but you tell me a time that you went to a restaurant where you didn't overeat because you were sitting there, and part of that is because of the setting, and you're with some people that you're just
Social, yeah.
visit, the social thing, right? Now, on the other hand, when you're home all the time, and there's been so many jokes about gaining weight because of people being locked down and set at home because they're bored. So there's that too. So there's a lot of factors in here that you can't, I don't think, can equate just one for one, that, oh, this is a cause and effect here and there. People are probably buying different types of meat too. When you go to a restaurant, how many times you buy a hamburger versus a steak if you're going to dinner?
Yeah, normally, well, it depends on the situation, but normally I get a steak because I am who I
Yeah,
am.
I can't remember. It's like, why would I buy a hamburger?
I'll normally get a
Yeah, I mean,
hamburger
it's
for lunch, not dinner though.
right,
Yeah.
right, but not a supper time. Really nice going out. I'm usually, my old standby, which is one of my favorites, is a nice ribeye.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna go for that. And at home, yeah, we'll eat steak, but it won't be those bigger cuts necessarily, unless we butchered our own, and then you kind of have your choice. But that's a finite supply. Not every piece of meat that comes off of a carcass is all ribeye. There's
Right.
plenty of butcher there too. So there's just habits of what you do when you go out. So uh, one of the things that I thought was interesting was, even though the prices have skyrocketed on meat, and we've talked about this, particularly beef. We've talked about this in the past, that it's, we're not seeing that. We're seeing a loss.
And that's where
There's
the
people
the
that
first
are
point about prices should increase. It'd be interesting to
right.
see what that's going to do on the back end to the consumer as well.
Well, generally, when a business makes a profit and they've done things to guarantee that profit, like the Packers do, then, and they're making 500 and 600% increases in profit from the previous year, while we're taking a loss, they don't want to give that up. You give a spoiled child a toy that they want, they just want more of that same thing, and that's exactly what they're going to be like. So I don't see the price swinging where they're going to take more of a loss and we're going to take more profitability. I don't see that unless you have some kind of a legislative thing, which I don't agree with on its face. However, I'm not about allowing people to do price fixing and things like that too. I mean, that's antitrust type stuff.
Yeah.
That's, we've been fighting for 100 and some years, 120, 130 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
With
and Teddy
Standard
Roosevelt
Oil.
was a big trust buster, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we want parity. We want equality in, let's share these profits. Everybody's is happy instead of putting people out of business. And there's some international interests in there too. They would love to put all of us out of business, so they can do that. But anyhow, one of the things that I saw come out of this or heard come out of this is the favorability of beef and what consumers think of beef as a product.
And where'd you get that information from, or where'd you hear it from?
It was just on. It was a deal on the radio on a national cattlemen's like cattleman to cattleman type show on one of our local AM stations, and they said that people, the consumer had like, I'm probably wrong, I was floored. It was like a 73% favorability, of beef.
That's crazy, because that's not that's not what you think. You always think that people are like, no, I want chicken. I want something that's the lean and it doesn't have fat in it.
Well, right, but when you look at it, I think more and more, and I said this before about high prices. We don't want high prices. I don't want exorbitant prices for our calves. I want a good, solid price where we can make money, but not see the consumer get gouged, because we want people to eat beef for every freaking meal, not just for their birthday, not just for an anniversary, not just for a dinner with friends. We want them eating beef all the time. So that, the favorability is good. That's a good thing, but that's all I heard about. I'm sure there's a lot of questions about that, about what do you think about the price of it? And that's why that's why we do what we do. We're trying to explain to people, hey, we don't make a lot of money on this. And we just had a guy that you've known since you were a little guy stop by to look at a horse for purchase here just the other day at the ranch. And we sat there and visited, and he asked how the cattle business was going, and told him it's tough. And, oh, really? Well, the price of beef is really high. I'm like, dude,
check out some of our episodes.
Yeah, and so it's like that is somebody who has a good share of land. They don't raise cattle, of course.
No. And he's an educated individual.
Very educated. Yep. And but just no idea, because it's outside of the realm of what he's doing, keeping his nose down, doing what he's doing, So yep. we got a big deal to overcome, as far as what the consumer knows. And that's part of why we want to make good quality beef and have it at a consistent type of product is important. And people know they're confident that they're safe, but to eat it, they don't have to worry about it. I mean, those are big deals that I think largely our public has grown so accustomed to that I don't think they even think about it. They just know that it's good.
Yeah.
You may hit some quality differences going to a place like Walmart. I'm not going to buy Walmart beef.
I don't have a choice, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know your situation down there, but you may have something, but you may not be able to pay for it. There's got to be some small butcher shops here and there. I don't know. But anyway, the quality difference between that and then raising your own, I mean, there's no comparison. And you can go to a good quality butcher and buy beef through them that they're purchasing. That's close. That's as close to you're going to get to your own. And in some cases, if you don't finish it right, you may have a better piece of beef over a butcher's counter than you would by making your own. Who knows? Now it depends on how it's processed, who does it, and if they do a good job, you can still have a very, very good quality beef, but it's certainly going to be well above what Walmart has. And that's my problem, is that I worry, and I don't worry about it really, because it is what it is. You can't teach people how to cook meat, and their preferences are different. If they like shoe leather type hardness on their beef, and they like it all gray and on the inside and black on the outside, but that's how they like it. That's how they like it. That's going to be a completely different piece of meat than if I'd have cooked it where it's seared on each side and juicy in the middle, they may prefer it that way. But I think that experience is a big one. It's like your mom. She was used to when she met me, she was used to eating gray beef because her mom. That's the way her mom cooked it. She wanted it done, and there's nobody else is going to be in the kitchen. Where I fixed a piece of meat, she goes, "How'd you do this? How's it so juicy?" And so like, well, really, I just show your mom how to cook good meat, and she's very good at it now. And it's funny to watch her because if she gets something that's a little overdone, she kind of turns her nose up. It's like you can tell
Spoiled.
it ruins that experience. But if people tend to get a poor piece of meat to start with from a place that's like Walmart,
Yep.
and I got no use for Walmart for a number of reasons. When you buy cheap, and that's what you're going to get, and that's where they're getting a lot of imported meats. That's not a good quality piece of beef.
That's another discussion we should have is cool and.
Oh, yeah. We will get started on that because we need to. But
maybe
yeah.
next week.
But but when you have a poor quality piece of meat to begin with, and you want somebody to be impressed to go back and eat more beef, that's not the way to do it. That's and to me, that's you might as well be eating a piece of chicken or pork or whatever, anything else that's just pure protein. And not that I don't like those, because I do. I enjoy other meats. Our focus is on this is what we're raising. So when you give somebody a good piece of meat, well cooked to where they like it, that's going to be a whole different experience for them than it is to get a poor piece of meat that they don't know how to cook or could cook better. Even if it is grayer, you can do some things to that meat that's going to make it taste and be a whole lot better for them. So yeah, and so there is that favorability. Is where is their favorability coming from? Is it coming from a place where they're not having the greatest preparation of this meat? Meat's poor in the first place because it's cheap.
Right.
You look at the color of some of the meats in
well, we've done that before. I think it was one of our first social media posts on Facebook. We took it was actually Albertsons, and nothing against Albertsons. It's just we grabbed a piece of meat. I think it was a T-bone, if I remember right. And we took
T-bone or a rib. I can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a piece of just standard cut meat from Albertsons, and then we're like, oh hey, we have one in the freezer, and for whatever reason we cooked both of them at the same time. I don't remember what the background was, but we grabbed both of them and we cooked them the exact same, like at the same time and everything. Pulled them off at the same time. I mean, everything was the same except for the piece of meat, and the difference between the two was astounding because the one from Albertsons was kind of gray and looked unhealthy, and then you looked at the one that we had, and it was red, bloody, and very healthy looking.
Well, the deep dark color of the meat we had was evident compared to a kind of a palish color to the box beef. But that box beef had been refroze, unfroze, laid out, and they get boxed beef. I mean, they're getting them from one of the big four, most likely. So, you're again, how many times has that piece of meat been froze, or how long is it set and then unfroze and then refroze again? So that doing that can sure make it tender, because all the ice crystals will cut down or do the number on the cells in the meat and make it more tender. But you're not getting necessarily the quality of piece of meat and the freshness, I guess, when I talk about quality, that you would on your own. So
and we should also state that when we did eat the two of them as well, ours tasted better, and that was not us being biased. It was just it just did. Like we all sat there and we all had a piece, and we're like, hey, which one do you think tastes better? And I think we did a blind taste test on Braden and Mom, because you and I were the only ones that knew. We're like, which one tastes better? And they're like, this one. We're like, that's ours.
Yeah. No, it was kind of nice. I mean, it'd be nice to do that with a group of people that have no idea what we're even doing. And say, hey, which rate this? Is one a little better than the other? Because they're going to be looking for differences in, but they just won't know what the differences are. Right. Which is a good true blind taste test. But how you cook it is an amazing thing too. I've seen some things on baking a steak, and I'm like, I don't know. So we tried it, and guess what? We baked it in a cast iron skillet.
Yep.
We seared it really quick on either side, and then put it in and baked it. I would have never guessed it was that good.
Hmm.
It was phenomenal.
Might need
I
to
mean,
get a cast iron
so
skillet now.
oh, got cast iron skillets. Yeah, we got
Uh,
cast iron skillets. I
all
should
right.
send you one. That thing would cost you an arm and a leg to get sent to you because they're heavy. But
Yeah.
um,
Well, I'm gonna be visiting
one of
this
the
summer.
things about yeah, that's true. The NCBA, I remember there was a big fight over, every animal that we sell, we have to send $1 to them. It's a $1 per head fee to the NCBA, and there was a giant fight over there. There was a national fight over there that one of our neighbors is the ones that said, you know what, you're mandating this. This is not me, volunteering for this, and we're mandated to do it. And here's the thing: if you don't do it, and we sell, and I think I overdid it because brand inspector come and we did a transfer of ownership, and I know I didn't pay him the fees for it because he's like, you know what? Hey, can I use your tire changer in the thing? I'll pay your
Oh,
fees. I was like,
yeah, it
okay.
was
And I thought,
kind of a barter thing.
oh yeah, well, and it is, but it's not because he's still putting the stuff in. I'm just, and we've helped him out a lot, or the kids and stuff, but you're just being neighborly. And I thought, oh, and then later I went, oh crap, did he hold out $1 for the beef checkoff? Because those are dollars that go towards education, all that kind of stuff. And if, some of it stays within the state if you ask that it be. And so I thought, oh my God, did I do that $1 checkoff? So for a single dollar, $1 for one steer that we sold privately, if I didn't put that dollar into our National Cattlemen's Beef Association, it's a $7,500 fine.
Ouch. I didn't know
Which
that.
is right. So there's some big teeth into that.
I'm
So it's
gonna tell
like
you right
I
now, a
couldn't
steer is
remember.
not worth $7,500.
I wish it was.
Yeah, me
Well, I do
too,
and I
but it's
don't.
not. That's just, oh gosh.
Right. And so I was like, oh crap. So I typed out a quick note to the NCBA, wrote a check for $1, and sent it to them. I was like, you know what? I don't need that kind of trouble. It is what it is, because they went to Supreme Court on this about whether you could or could not force somebody to join the mandated dollar checkoff, and ultimately lost.
Well,
So
I
we
would
have the
I would
dollar
hope
checkoff.
so because I mean, you're taking away choices. Yeah, whatever.
Well, no, we didn't. I mean, no, the rancher lost. They lost the suit ultimately. In one court they did, and they pushed it. So you
But
still have that
why?
dollar checkoff now. Yes.
I don't understand like that. Okay.
That There you go with politics. And so there's a lot of infighting and a lot of distrust between cattlemen
I was
and
gonna say that's probably one of the main
producers.
reasons why I hear so many cattlemen across the country go, "I'm not with the NCBA" because they
There you
do
go.
stuff,
And that's
slimy
part of
stuff
it.
like that. Yeah.
That's part of it. That's exactly. And so you got to have a united front for all of us, but everybody has different interests. I
And I
mean,
recognize that too.
don't do it.
It's like I would say like the NRA. Actually, you know what? Probably let's do the let's just choose the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, of course, you're going to have different people. There's going to be people who consider themselves progressives, others who are communists, others who are socialists, but they're all generally
What's the difference?
you can discuss that
Sorry.
later.
Yeah, I
They're all
know.
generally in the same political spectrum though, and
Right.
they're not going to agree on everything. But as long as they're rowing in the same direction,
Right.
that that's important. But when you do stuff like that, it definitely, referring to the NCBA nonsense, so that definitely degrades that, and it does not help with unity like you're talking about.
No, and I mean that's happened in the past with the stock growers associations. I
Yeah.
mean all kinds of stuff. You anytime you get a bunch of people together and they have differing ideas, and a lot of good things can come out of that, sharing those ideas and what's happening. But when you don't listen to each other
Yeah.
and you don't look at, like, okay, how can this be worked? Yeah, that's got some merit to it, but what if we changed it a little bit and did this? That's constructive criticism, right? And some good things can come out of that
Right.
collaboration. But when you are just sitting there beating your heads against each other and saying no, and there's nobody more independent than ag people.
Oh yeah, it's frustrating.
I mean, really, I mean,
And
I'm
not even
serious.
just ag, but I would also argue the horse world. If anybody's been involved in the horse world, it's one of the most
Yeah.
cutthroat industries, and it aggravates me to no end because there's no reason for it.
Well, and I think that's even worse because there's more ego involved.
Yeah, well, I think that's the root of all of it. I mean, even the NCBA,
Yeah,
you probably get guys up there because they're let's be frank, they're lobbyists. That's what their job is to
yeah,
lobby for us at Washington because nobody else will. And so they're using I mean, here's where you got to kind of look at that dollar per steer, dollar per cow in a
yeah.
silver
Dollar per
light.
animal.
Yeah, it's to help lobby for us. So in a way, it's like paying the people we want to lobby for us. Got it. But at the same
Yeah,
time, some of those people have probably been there 20, 30 years and they don't really know what the front end and the back end of a cow looks like anymore. And so, they get certain egos like, well, I know what to do here in Washington. I know how to handle it. And so when you challenge them on policy, like what you're saying, constructive criticism, like, hey, times have changed since the last time you were actually out on a horse or something. If you do something like this, and here's how you actually should do it, industry wise for selling the cattle or marketing the cattle or whatnot, they don't want to accept that because they haven't done it for a while, and it's the ego thing. Well, do you know who I am? I'm the president of the NCBA. I don't know if there is a president, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I,
yeah.
yeah, but
Well,
whatever.
anytime you have a lobby, and here's where influence can be inherently negative to more than the person who's doing the lobbying, and that is, let's say you got a guy who, they've got an operation that, they raise cattle and they put them into a feedlot for a short time, and then they go to right to a maybe a secondary feeder, or goes right to someone who goes to slaughter. Okay, let's say that happens, uh, and they that's how they operate, and then they go to a position where they're a lobbyist and they've been doing this for a long time and they're very, very good at what they do. You think their interests are going to lie with that portion of an operation? Or do you think they're going to go to a guy who just raises cow calf pairs and sells the calves and doesn't finish them at all? Where do you think the majority of that influence is probably going to go?
Well, I'm gonna say it's gonna go to the finishing because it's got the most money behind it.
Well, because that's what they do. That's what they know best. And that's where, if they're still in that business, that's where they're going to want to see the most help come to them. So what? Guys got ground and they're just finishing or selling calves that are weaned. They're coming to us anyway. We don't care what they do. We've got an outlet. What I want to do is I want to increase our base on how we're controlling these cattle going into a market. I'm not saying they're doing that. Probably some are, but what I'm saying is, anytime you have industry insiders, they're going to tend to line their own pocket or
Right.
their friends.
And I think that's what I was kind of getting at is whatever is going to
Yeah,
produce the most money is where they're going to go.
right. But here's the crux problem with that is that who else are you going to have lobby for you,
Exactly. It's
right? And so that beef checkoff, to me personally, I've got no issue with it. The issue I have with it is exactly what the family that was fighting it is don't tell me I have to do something.
it's a principle.
I will. It is a principle. I will.
Mhm.
I will gladly $1 a head. Yes, if it goes towards education, and the whole beef, it's what's for dinner.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. That is such an iconic um, a slogan now that
It's actually dying
well worth
away.
the money
My
spent to do it.
my generation actually doesn't recognize it. I saw this somewhere. I don't know where. It was probably Twitter because that's where I see a lot of things. But anyway, I'm 27. People 25 and younger really don't recognize that anymore because it's not run. The beef council no
I,
longer does that.
right. And then there's a problem. What are they doing to replace it?
I don't know. If you
Okay,
if
and
you
that's a
do,
problem. If
let
you're
me
not
know.
seeing it,
Yeah.
exactly. If you're not seeing it, then we've got an issue. We have got to do something to get that to the forefront again.
Yep.
I mean, good God, you used to see bumper stickers with that,
Oh yeah.
and that, you know, and so and you'd see people, they'd sit down for a meal and they go, beef is what's for
What's for
dinner.
dinner?
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So of course we did that all the time too, but that was a whole we're a little biased. But my whole point is, as long as money is being taken from me, even involuntarily, and it is going to ultimately help me with that beef checkoff dollar, and to go through the NCBA to do that and educate people and to further what we can do as producers and have consumer confidence, I'm all for it, because I would volunteer that anyway. I really would. To me, it's a small price to pay. It's that everybody chipping in a little bit, and I think that was really where that come about, the
The
per head
intention
basis
to begin with.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, don't tell me I got to do something.
I agree. All right, moving on, just real quick.
Yep.
We
Another
got
point. Sorry.
we got 3 more points. We only got through 2 so far. This
Yeah,
might be a longer
we'll make it.
episode. The other thing that they said was the subtitle is number 3, just change breeds. At this virtual conference, virtual convention, they said cow calf producers, particularly small and medium sized ones, so we would fit right in there, struggle with maintaining heterosis, crossbred vigor in their cow herds. If you're a peasant such as myself and you don't know what heterosis is, I'll pull up the definition. It says the tendency of a crossbred individual to show qualities superior to both of the parents. So, what does that mean exactly? Well, if you go down the article a little bit further, it says ranches that follow this approach, meaning going into the crossbreeding to get heterosis, you follow the approach, it'll relatively easily maintain at least 50% heterosis in the herd long term. And if you change your breed of bull every 4 years, you can get nearly 50% heterosis in the herd, which is actually impressive. So that, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It means they're pulling the best, essentially each generation of calf or cow, it's pulling the better traits of the parents each generation, each year. So that's cool. I think that's actually an awesome idea. We've tossed around the idea of what was the breed that we were looking at?
Well, we've what you were talking about, what we're looking to do, but for not to cross them, but to do something different.
But you could cross them. It's a thought.
You could. Yeah, you could. You'd want to be careful how you did that, because you got the double muscling
right
on the breed. But you think about that in human terms. We are a nation of crossbreeding and interbreeding nationalities.
Right.
And Americans are for the most part just a wide variety and are very healthy that way. You take some cultures that are, never outcross with any other genetic bloodlines, and doesn't mean they're inferior. Some would say they're, superior. I mean, we've had that argument with some world wars, but genetic variation is a very important thing to do. And so when you have a melting pot like we do, and that's kind of what you're doing with your cattle or hogs or chickens. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do that with. It does make can make a stronger, more hardy breed, because you are picking up those traits, because you're actually selecting for survival. Nature's doing that, and you're kind of riding that wave.
Well,
but
I thought it was
we were talking about,
because you have the potential to create more muscling, which ultimately means more steak and more meat and potentially more money, maybe. That's kind of where my idea went. Was I was like, oh, that is a cool thing. I didn't think about it because we've always been, red Angus all the way. But
but what we really watch our sires and our bloodlines, so that we're not line breeding or inbreeding with our bulls that we purchase outside, so that we've got a wide variety in that gene pool, and you look around so that you're not doing that. But yeah, there's a lot of red Angus people who will cross with, say, a Gelbvieh cattle, or the Piedmontese is what you were talking about.
There you go. Yeah, Piedmontese.
But they're a double muscled, heavy muscled animal. I would not want to have a Piedmontese bull on our red Angus cows, because you may produce something that's got such heavy body, high birth weight, that you're going to be pulling a lot of calves. You're going to be tearing cows up. I mean, you're going to have some problems. You might take a red Angus bull and put it with a Gelbvieh or a Piedmontese cow.
That would make sense, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, a little more, but how many of those are you going to get? It takes a while to change your breed. Interesting thing, and we haven't talked about it, but I was dealing yesterday over the phone with a broker about trying to market our cattle, and had a really good meeting with her. Good, some questions I had, and she was explaining things. But all of our stuff is, we've talked about, is all natural. The water they drink comes bubbling out of the ground through sandstone. I mean, they're
Right.
fresh, good water, no hormones, nothing like that. And I was explaining everything we do with our operation. She's like, "Oh yeah," and I said, "The Red Angus," and we've been doing this natural, no hormone, no, any kind of a like medicated feeds, anything like that, so that
It's
they
like
are
there's
a
no
natural
additive.
animal.
The only thing we've got is mineral,
None.
which is that's also natural. It's just combined into a
Right.
certain thing, like a kind of
Right.
pebbly cake, I guess.
Well, and I explained all of that to her, and she's, "Oh yeah, you guys did everything's right down the line."
Yeah.
And I said, "So I'd like to be able to get that premium for this natural." And she goes, "Red Angus, nobody's taking them.
Nope.
They're taking Black Angus."
Because the Black Angus, they
It,
figured it out. Those guys marketed somehow, some way, in the best way possible.
brilliant in marketing. Well, and so I'm like, "God damn it."
Yeah.
I don't want to change a breed because I love these reds and their calm disposition.
I
They're
was gonna say
good mothers.
disposition.
Um, there's a lot of advantages to having a red cow versus a black cow in the summertime in the heat. I mean, there's just a lot of advantages, and the marketing is what they've done with the Black Angus. And here's the other part: if you're a Black Angus type of lobbyist, what are you going to do for the reds?
Nothing.
You're going to do nothing for them. You're going to go, you know what? It's got to be certified Black Angus because they've done such a brilliant job in marketing. Why wouldn't you ride that wave?
Yeah.
So I'm like, so her and I are going to work together to see if we can find a buyer for our Red Angus that want all natural. And I thought, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm cooking your mother some breakfast this morning. And this just been burning on me since yesterday. And I'm like, there's a niche there. There is a niche.
Yeah.
And if we can just figure out how, who, and how to do this so that you're marketing these reds as all natural and somebody who wants them, there you go. We got it. And I think that's where,
when
as
it
an
comes to stuff
association,
like,
we don't think we should.
yeah, with stuff like that, you just got to find the right person. Really, I mean, because when somebody, it's like looking at a white person and a black person and going, "You're better because of your skin color." That's all it is. Because it's the exact same product. It's the exact same product.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's illogical to think otherwise, but it's about marketing, and that's ultimately who you're going to as a consumer.
Yep.
Restaurants. Have you ever gone into a restaurant, open up a menu, and it'll say certified Black Angus beef? We serve only.
I've seen some of that, but then the other thing too is being with friends who are not, they never grew up in the agriculture industry whatsoever. It'll just say Angus beef or Angus burger or Angus steak, and they'll go, "Oh yeah, it's those black cows." I'm like, that doesn't mean it's black. It's an Angus. That's a breed. That's what it is.
Right.
They've got it in their head too. Even not being in the agriculture industry, they see Black Angus when they see the word Angus, they think black.
And when you as a producer or as a group of producers can do that, you now own that industry.
Oh yeah, yep.
100%. So if you want to do that, now what do you do with the rest of the industry that's there? Would you like to have a monopoly on it? Hell yes. And that's part of the problem. We're cutting each other's throats, or trying to do that, put people out of business. Or you buy my bulls. I have all these bred heifers, and I have our bulls, and they're all black. You want to play in our game? You buy our stuff. Right. Otherwise, get lost. We don't want you around, and we will crush you.
Well, and you said something earlier.
You see it in the sale.
You said something earlier too. To circle back, going back, you said watching the line breeding, because we were talking about what stemmed this small conversation was switching breeds and stuff like that to get heterosis. We watch our line breeding. We're very adamant, not only just with horses but also with the cows, of making sure that the genetics are right, that we don't interbreed and stuff like that. Do you think that's part of the reason that came up with this notion of you should do crossbreeding, because maybe guys and gals aren't paying attention to their breeding like they should? So the easy answer is, instead of looking at the bloodlines like we do, and like you and mom diligently look at every year you go to get a bull, that people are just going, yeah, that one looks good, that one looks good. And so it's resulting in some of these issues. And therefore, the NCBA's answer is just, okay, the easiest way to do this for the lowest thinking person, I guess the one that our most limiting factor is what it really would be as an industry, is just to tell everybody swap breeds every once in a while, and that'll make it easier, and that'll make up for that. Or where do you think that's coming from?
Well, I think it's that's one way to do it. I mean, that's a short, easy answer. Well, you go ahead and you take a big old ship and turn it 90 degrees on the ocean. That doesn't happen,
It's not immediate,
you
no.
know, in just a couple minutes. It takes years to do that. I mean, you'd have to, in order to really do that well, you'd have to spend 3 to 4 years to completely turn that, where you have all breeding. Say if we were to start buying black bulls, and really that's all it takes is once you start getting 50%, whatever where your dominant traits are, and you say you start producing, the number one thing that a black Angus has to have is a black hide. You can do that with a single sire, and then you start selecting those heifers back for that, and you start turning your herd. Well, let's say you have 100 head and you save back 20%. It's going to take you 5 years to have those breeding, and it's going to take 2 years for us to have that first bunch breeding. So you're really looking at about a 7 to 8 year process to turn your herd, unless you completely liquidate and then buy all back, and that'll put you out of business. You can't do that, you know.
It's impossible.
But here's a good example of interbreeding. What happened to the Egyptians, ancient Egyptians, and any society that had to have royal blood in their genetics for inheritance of the kingdom.
Well, I was gonna say, you look at the Egyptians specifically,
Yes,
you had
King Tut.
serious, you had serious um, health issues and then mental issues. I mean, you look at
Yeah.
Europe specifically around the time of World War One, they were
Yes.
all the royal families were so interbred amongst one another that there were
Yes.
serious diseases. Like, for example,
Yes.
you look at
Poor health.
you look at the Russian family.
Yep.
The kid had it was celiac
The
disease.
Romanovs.
Romanovs, yeah. The little boy, essentially, I don't remember what the disease is, but he was so interbred because of his lineage that I mean, he so much as got a tiny cut and it was life threatening. I mean,
Well, it's hemophilia. That's
there
where
it is,
that. Yeah.
hemophilia. Yeah, that's what he had,
Yeah.
and it was, I mean, it was a serious issue that I mean, they were babying him until they were assassinated. But
Right. But that's my point. That just shows in humans that happens. You
right.
put that in animals, and what was it? Irish setter breed. I was talking to somebody one time about an Irish setters, and they go, "Oh yeah, they interbred them, continue to breed those dogs until they bred the brains out of them. The stupidest dog in the world." I went,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay." And I've been around some Irish setters that are like, they're just, they're nutty, you know. They're happy-go-lucky dog, but they were dumb. And I don't know that that's the case, but this guy was a breeder, a water dog, you know, bird guy, and he said they ruined that breed because they continue to interbreed and line breed these down to where they got bottleneck genetics, and boom, then you got problems. You can't. It takes generations, if you'll ever get it pulled out from there, to crossbreed that back out.
Yeah.
So crossbreeding can be important, and yeah, we do watch that. We watch that very, very closely, and so
I mean,
you know,
we
you want to
watched
prevent it.
not to crossbreed.
Yes, absolutely. Well, no, well, we want to crossbreed. We don't want to line breed or inbreed. We want to have genetics that are different, and combine, bring those in within our Red Angus breed.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah. That's how we should say it. We want to crossbreed within the Red Angus because we still are red through and through right
right,
now, but we make sure that the bloodlines are not anywhere near each other.